Good morning. Good morning, everyone. If we can settle and find our seats. Good morning. My name is Reverend Willie Bodrick II, and I serve as the senior pastor here at the historic 12th Baptist Church, and we want to welcome you here for this returning Citizens Roundtable and Expo here in partnership with Boston Medical Center. Come on, put your hands together for this great event. As the pastor of this church, it is my honor to welcome you into this hallowed space. We are a church of love, light, life, and liberation. And it is in that spirit that we come here today. We are the church that spans our history back over almost 185 years as 12th Baptist Church. Next year, 220 from the African Meeting House. We were the church known as the Fugitive Slave Church, because in the 1800s, during the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, it was this place that was here as a safe haven for those who escaped from the South. We're the Church of King and Haynes. It was in this place where Dr. King worked and served, and it is here where he first heard his first wife, Carla, first heard him preach. But it was in this place and in this city where he began to be shaped and molded for the work that we are here to discuss today. We are a church of the now, and we want to welcome you in this moment as we talk about an issue that is so important here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We recognize that the criminal justice system presents significant challenges, and many a times for those in our communities, for many of the folks who you serve, and for those who even have personal testimonies of their justice involvement. And we know that here in Massachusetts alone, that Black and brown communities make up too large of the population of our criminal justice system. And this overrepresentation is troubling when we talk about many of the issues that we will discuss today. But there's hope because of this room. There's hope because there's people that care. There's hope because we know that we can make a difference and change the realities for those who are coming back into our communities who have given their time to society. In that spirit, we prepare today. And let me just say, you might hear some hammering. We're working on the building right now. The work we're doing on the building is the same work. We're about to start hammering on these panels and in these conversations. So please don't be alarmed. But as we do here at 12th Baptist Church, we always open with a word of prayer. So no matter your religious affiliation or beliefs or non-beliefs, we invite you for this time, and let us bow. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for life, health, and strength. And God, we thank you for all those who have come together as stakeholders and as community leaders and as folks who work in the spaces to make sure that justice is served. God, we come on this day as we continue to do the work that you've called us to do, to make sure that we are reducing the barriers to return those into our community. And so, God, we just ask that in our work together, that you continue to give us all that we need to do your work, your will, and your way, that you continue to give us the insights, the collaborations, to be able to listen to those who have gone through these experiences and hopefully be able to work together to do something about it and make a change. And so as we gather together, we thank you for Boston Medical Center. We thank you for all the organizations that will be a part of the expo. God, we thank you for those who are willing to tell their story so that someone else might be free. So we ask that you be with us on this day. Grant unto us your peace in the spirit of love and justice. Let everyone say, amen. It's at this time that I am so excited to introduce and to bring up one who I consider to be a partner in this work. She is the Vice President of Community and Engagement and External Affairs at Boston Medical Center. But most importantly, I'm glad to count her as my friend. Please welcome Patrina Martin-Cherry to the floor.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I have some prepared notes, and I'll get to those, but I have to start by saying my heart is so full right now. A couple of months ago, we got together with the Attorney General's office to host a roundtable discussion with returning citizens and organizations that provide services. And we understood before, and even more so after that conversation, the need to host convenings like this so that returning citizens felt seen and heard, and that they were provided information and access. And that is what today is all about. So we hope that all of you feel welcome in this space. We have some amazing conversations that are going to happen, some panel discussions, and most importantly, later on today, we have an expo filled with resources, a room filled with organizations who are here and willing to help you all. So thank you. So to my notes. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, and most importantly, our returning citizens, welcome to this event hosted by Boston Medical Center Health System. I want to start by thanking our amazing host, Reverend Willie Bodrick. Thank you so much for opening up this church to us. We appreciate your partnership. I also want to thank our partners at the Attorney General's office. Thank you, Sherry, and this entire team for being here. A.G. Campbell is going to join us later today. Today we gather to address the unique challenges faced by those who have experienced incarceration, with a focus on mental health and workforce development. We recognize that the journey to reintegration can be daunting, but you are not alone. At Boston Medical Center Health System, we know that health equity is the foundation to community well-being. We are intentional about building pathways to housing, economic mobility, education, and workforce development to create equitable access for all. Our program today features panel discussions where experts will shed light on mental health issues that many returning citizens encounter. We'll also explore pathways to meaningful employment, equipping you with tools and insights needed to thrive. Additionally, we've organized an expo showcasing an array of resources from healthcare to job readiness to legal services and housing assistance. These resources are designed to empower you and to facilitate your transition back to the community. We believe that everyone deserves support and opportunity to rebuild their lives and have a second chance. Today is about connection, understanding, and hope. Let's work together today and every day to create a brighter future. Thank you for being here. So we also know that we were all very excited to host Father Greg Boyle today. We have found out that he has fallen ill, and so he will not be with us today. Our keynote today will be given by our own Attorney General, Andrea Campbell. And so we have an amazing panel prepared for you today, an amazing conversation. So we look forward to a day filled with information and resources. We also want to recognize our elected officials, most of all, our Senator Liz Miranda, who is going to come up and say a few words for us today. So let's welcome Senator Liz Miranda.
I'm going to talk to my staff. I don't ever want to come behind the good Reverend and Miss Cherry because I don't speak as eloquently as them, but I'm just so happy to be here today. I oftentimes remind people that I've been an elected official for 7 years, 1 term in the Senate, 2 terms in the House, but I've been a Roxbury girl for 44 years. And that actually is the reason why I do this work. It's not because, or only because, folks that are incarcerated in the Commonwealth and who come home are in the care and custody of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, even though we don't always act like it. It's not because there are 6,000 people incarcerated in our Massachusetts DOC system with a steady decline, and most people, about 84%, come home. It's because I lived with this my entire life. I grew up off of Dudley Street in a community on Woodward Avenue that was in between Orchard Park and Windover Street. And I never really understood growing up in the 90s in particular why I had a whole street that I'd walk down with my grandmother, but it wasn't necessarily safe for the young men in my community to go even 3 blocks. So you couldn't go to Dudley Park if you weren't from Dudley Park. You couldn't go to Wendover if you weren't from Wendover. You couldn't go to Hancock if you weren't from Hancock. You couldn't go to OP if you weren't from OP. And this was just one small street that was less than a mile long. And for that, I kept asking myself the questions about, is this fair? Why is this happening in our community? I loved my community. It felt safe. Every time I turned on the news, though, there was a different image. I also dealt with this in my own family. For those of you that don't know my story, all 3 of my brothers and my father were both all incarcerated. My father and my eldest brother were incarcerated and then deported. My second oldest brother, when I was a first House member, I was the only elected official in Massachusetts that had a sibling in the Massachusetts DOC. And what started as me continuing to visit him at Sousa, then Shirley, then Old Colony, before his release, became something that I then started visiting other people. And I see some people in this room that I had the honor and privilege of working on their cases that were incarcerated. I see you, David, going to Concord and being in that room with you and seeing what you've been able to do since you've come home. I think we should all give him a round of applause. So this is what we mean about hope. This is what we mean about promise. So I hope that I talk the talk and walk the walk, because these are not throwaway people. These are our fathers, they're our brothers, they're our mothers, they're our sisters, they're our children. And if we do right by them, we do right by society. So I'm just happy to be a partner with all of you. I'm excited about today's expo. I want to see this replicated. We pump millions of dollars into reentry here in the Commonwealth. We spend over $1 billion on what we call public safety, whether it's state police, whether it's our DOC facility. And then every time someone gets released from incarceration, they're coming to my office like, I don't have an ID, I don't have a place to live, I need mental health services, I don't have health care. And some of those people have served 20 years, 2 years, some of them have served 44 years. And so something is really wrong with a Commonwealth that invests so much money into a system that is not working. Most of us have to do the work here in the community, and we should be able to partner with the Commonwealth to get better outcomes. So thank you, welcome home for those of you that are newly home, and for those of you that do this work that is thankless. I see social workers in the room, I see folks on running organizations. Just know that it's really appreciated, and there are people that really need you, and I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing the work that you do. Thanks.
Miranda. It is amazing to have people like you and like the AG in seats of power who can really advocate for all of the issues that you mentioned. In the time that we've been doing this work with returning citizens, I've had the unique pleasure to meet with so many incredible individuals and organizations who are really focused on making sure that they're creating pathways. One of the organizations that we've been working with is the Transformational Prison Project. And so Bobby, who is in leadership in that organization, is going to come up and tell you more about it. But the one thing that I've loved about this organization and about Bobby is that whenever we convene, they have what's called a grounding. And it is, I'm really going to mess this up, Bobby, so fix whatever I mess up. But it's an opportunity to get us all on the same plane, to get us all in a space of healing and forgiveness. And so I'm going to ask Bobby to come up and center us with a grounding this morning. So Bobby from the Transformational Prison Project.
How's everybody doing today? Good? I need like a milk crate or something. But yeah, so before I talk a little bit about TPP, I really want to center us. I'm a true believer in restorative practices. It changed my life. It didn't just change it, it saved it. In every setting, whether it be an event, a meeting, a circle, we start off with a grounding. Now, it can be a prayer, a meditation, a breathing exercise, a combination of it all, right? But I'm going to bring us through a quick breathing exercise. And everything that I do is volunteer. You don't have to do it, you don't feel comfortable, right? So I'm going to ask you all to sit back, get relaxed, and if you feel comfortable, just close your eyes. And I just want you to focus in on your breathing. I want everybody to take one deep breath in and out. I invite you to take another deep breath in and out. And as you focus in on your breathing, if you have any racing thoughts going through your mind, just try to clear your mind. If you have any nerves, anxieties, pains floating through your body, just try to free your body. I ask you to try to just focus in on the space. Try to be present in this space. Try to be present together in this space. You know that you're in a safe space, a safe container. Let's all take another deep breath in and out. And let's all take one last big deep breath in and just let it all out. And when you're comfortable and ready, please come back to the space. Thank you. I appreciate you all joining that with me, but I'm going to talk a little bit about TPP and the work that we do, and then I'm going to pass it back over to Trina. So TPP, the Transformational Prison Project, or Restorative Justice Organization, we actually started inside MCI Norfolk. We're a formerly incarcerated ran organization. Majority of the individuals are formerly incarcerated. We try to promote accountability and healing and try to change the way the criminal system and communities respond to harm. And we do this by facilitating restorative dialogue amongst impacted parties. And that's inside Department of Youth Services, inside the HOCs, prisons, boardrooms, classrooms, hospitals, wherever, because we believe RJ belongs everywhere. And I also want to say that, you know, the work, like I said, started on the inside. And in order for that to happen, I really have to shout out, you know, like the survivors that came in the inside and sat with us in space and really showed us what accountability was, right? They showed us what forgiveness was. And I had to get to the point where I had to deal with myself first to become accountable for my actions. I had to deal with my trauma. I had to heal. And I had to pick those things that led to another thing that led to another thing that got me in the situation that I was in. And if it wasn't for people on the outside coming in, helping us guide through that, I wouldn't be in the situation, in the place that I am today. And before I end, I just want to say, you know, also I really have to shout out the individuals that are still on the inside, right? The lifers and long-termers, because at one time I was a lifer, and luckily I overturned my case, right? And those are the people that, instead of giving me a knife, they gave me a book, you know? They told me to go to restorative justice classes. They helped me on speaking engagements, right? And they might never come home. And it gives me goosebumps just thinking about that, because they're the ones that brought me to the place where I am as well. So every day that I live out and I do the work that I do, I also do it for them, because they deserve a shot as well, right? And one more time before I close, because I could talk a lot. I know Trina's giving me that look like, shut up, because I could talk a lot, right? But still, you know, reentry is a difficult thing, you know? October 22nd, I'll be home for 5 years, and I'm still on my reentry path. Like, it doesn't stop, you know? And I'm a true believer in lived experience. Like, we should be in this work, man, right? We got more experience than the people that have these degrees, and no disrespect to nobody, because we lived it. We know what it's about, you know? For one day, you know, just, I'm gonna stop, I'm gonna end there. I appreciate you all, and I want to shout out Liz real quick again, right? Because she's the one that used to come on the inside too with individuals and sit with us. And she speaks the truth, and she's a fighter for us as well. So I just want to say that. I'm gonna stop. Trina, pass it over to you. I appreciate you all. Peace.
Can we have round of applause for Bobby and TPP. So at Boston Medical Center, we believe that the community should be the core of all the work that we do. And reentry should be just that. People should be allowed to reenter society. They should be allowed to, after they've taken care of what they had to take care of and their responsibilities to the state, they should be able to come home and start a new life. And so that is what today is all about. That is what our work at Boston Medical Center focuses on. Boston Medical Center is an institution that we're what they're called one of America's essential hospitals. So that means that, you know, we serve everybody regardless of their ability to pay. And so we provide excellent clinical care, but we also make sure that we provide services and on-roads and pathways to people through really innovative programs like VIAP that our own Dr. Thea James, stand up Thea so we can recognize you and give you a hand. Dr. Thea James, who is the founder of the VIAP program. There's so many programs that we can talk about today, but these conversations, like the ones that we're about to have right now, are essential, and we want community leading these conversations, which is why we have returning citizens on this panel today. So. This panel is going to be a discussion on mental health and workforce development, and it is led by Reverend Willie Bodrick. Reverend Bodrick was born and raised in Atlanta. He was inspired by the work of Dr. Martin Luther King and the history of the civil rights movement. He's committed to continuing the legacy of creating a beloved community and balancing the scales of justice. He holds a BA from Georgetown University and a Master's of Divinity from Harvard Divinity School. In 2020, he graduated from Northeastern University School of Law, receiving a JD degree. And in May of 22, Reverend Bodrick received an honorary doctorate of community service from Northeastern University, and I think he is the youngest person to ever receive an honorary doctorate from Northeastern. Prior to joining the position where he is now at TAC, he worked with Brown Ruddick as a senior advisor and was successful in the 2020 Ed Markey campaign for U.S. Senate as the outreach coordinator in the Community Engagement Division of the Mass Office of the Attorney General Maura Healey. Concurrently, he now serves as senior pastor of this great church, and he is also an outspoken advocate for social and economic justice. At 12th Baptist Church, he successfully led this 182-year-old church through a profound challenges created by the pandemic. He's partnered with us at Boston Medical Center to establish a vaccination clinic that vaccinated over 2,500 people and led the efforts of feeding over 15,000 residents in 2021 through his food pantry and special programming. So actively engaged in the community of Roxbury, the city of Boston, and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Willie holds multiple leadership positions, including president of the Boston Network of Black Student Achievement. He's a member of Boston Public Schools Opportunity and Achievement Gap Task Force. He's on the board of directors for the Massachusetts Advocate for Children, a member of the Boston Medical Center Accelerator Community Advisory Committee, co-founder of the Forward Fund, the Boston Foundation's Harvard and the Legacy of Slavery Advisory Committee. He's busy, right? And above all that, he is a resident of Roxbury, where he lives with his wife, Dr. Devin Cormati, and his son, Willie Bodrick III. Help me welcome Reverend Willie Bodrick.
I told her to just say I'm a child of God, that's all. We're so excited to have this conversation here today, and it's so important. We have an amazing panel for you today, and I'm excited to bring these folks forward to be in this conversation, but most importantly, we're excited to be in conversation with you as well. The first panelist that will be coming is Mike Curry from Life After Prison. Mike Curry is a former prisoner turned entrepreneur and author. After facing a severe sentencing enhancements as a career criminal, he served a total of 21 years in federal prison. During his incarceration, he committed to personal growth, and discovered writing as a means of coping and self-improvement. Released under the First Step Act, Mike Curry enrolled and graduated from Project Entrepreneur at Boston College, a program designed for formerly incarcerated individuals. After completing the program, he co-founded the Life After Prison organization and authored the 3 Pounds of Pressure book series, drawing from his experiences of being involved in street life, incarceration, and most importantly, helping to support others who have experienced incarceration as well. Please welcome Mike Curry to the stage. Our next panelist is Jay Villar from Fountain Fund. Jay Villar is the Boston site director of the Fountain Fund and is a seasoned professional dedicated to advancing racial and social justice through community empowerment and program development. With over 2 decades of experience in leadership roles, Jay brings a wealth of expertise in strategic planning, stakeholder management, and team leadership. Having served as program director at Haley House in Boston, Jay successfully led initiatives that positively impacted the lives of returning citizens, providing them with resources, employment opportunities, and community support. Jay's passion for equity advocacy stems from his personal experiences, including growing up with family members who are returning citizens. Jay has a Bachelor's of Arts in Communication from George Mason University and certifications in event management, marketing, and nonprofit leadership. Please welcome Jay Villar to the stage. And last but definitely not least, our last panelist is Carla Montero. Carla has an MSW, and she is an amazing advocate and leader. She continues to do amazing work in the work that she does as a social worker. And I think there's a page missing, y'all, so be patient with me. Thank you. I appreciate you. Carla is the Behavioral Health Director for the Addiction Treatment Services at the Graken Center for Addiction at Boston Medical Center, where she oversees the clinical and operational aspects of substance use disorder programs and initiatives. She is also a doctoral student in social work at Sacred Heart University, pursuing her research interests in substance use, race, ethnicity, and treatment outcomes. Carla teaches a substance use and social work course as an adjunct professor at Simmons University, and with over 7 years of experience in addiction, correction facilities, and hospital settings, and as a licensed independent clinical social worker, and as a licensed alcohol and drug counselor, Carla has developed and implemented evidence-based interventions, policies, and practices to address the complex needs of diverse populations affected by SUDs, mental illness, and systemic barriers. She is also a passionate advocate for social and racial justice, serving on various advisory committees and boards, and engaging in community outreach and education and public speaking. Carla has received multiple awards and recognitions for her social work and community contributions, including the Boston Business Journal 40 Under 40 honoree and the Commonwealth Heroine Award. Please welcome Carla to the stage. You all can grab it, Mike. Make yourself home.
I just want to say what the Reverend didn't say is that he was 40 under 40 with me.
I was, thank you. It's an important conversation, and the reason why it's so important that we have this conversation here in this church is because we're so deeply committed to the work of returning citizens. The issues that you've heard, I think Senator Miranda talked about them, Trina talked about them, re-entering into our community has not been an easy thing for many of folks. We're talking about the barriers of facing employment gaps and the issues of trying to navigate this system, which is not easy to navigate, as well as the intersectional issues of dealing with family and dealing with community and feeling the feelings that folks have as they return and the perceptions that people have about them as they return. And so I think I want to start this conversation with Mike, because Mike, I think you is such power. One, that shirt, isn't that a bad shirt, y'all? Man, we'll talk about that later. But Mike, can you share some insights into how the psychological impacts of incarceration affects you, but also how it affects an individual as they're trying to come back to their families, come back to communities, come back into our society and make themselves whole again?
So it all starts with trauma. trauma has no face, so if you see me, you might not know the things that I've been through by the way I carry myself, because I was able to mask everything within. But one of the things that I experienced coming home from prison is a syndrome called post-incarceration syndrome, aka PICS. PICS is a psychiatric disorder that many people leaving prison has, including myself. When I first came out of prison, I found myself isolating myself from my friends and my family. I found myself depressed. I found myself stressing. I found myself dealing with anxiety, and I couldn't understand why until I found what post-incarceration syndrome was. It did not only affect me, but it also affected my family, because they couldn't understand why I would isolate myself or just the things that I was doing. It was unfamiliar to them because I wasn't like that before I went in prison. While I was in prison, I was in federal prison, and that contributed to the post-incarceration syndrome because I was 500-600 miles away from my family. So I was faced with lack of visitation. I was faced with isolation because I didn't know nobody in the prison that I was in. So I was forced to hang and be around people that I would normally be around. So that affected me mentally. So after I did my prison time and I came home, I still was living on the outside like I was living inside prison. I was trapping myself in my room like it was my cell. I was stressing over things that I didn't even need to stress about. I had fears of the unknown. I was having fears of not being productive at the job that I had. So it was things like that that contributed to me understanding myself and getting a better grips of myself. So I had to take one step back and ask myself what was wrong with me. And then once I realized that all the traits was contributed to what is called PICS, that's when I knew, and that's when I decided that I had to do better. In order for me to do better, I had to assess myself mentally.
Can we give him a big round of applause for that? How many people in the room knew the term PICS? That means we learning already. It's important to kind of hear what you're talking about because so many people go through what you're going through, Mike, and have went through what you're going through. What do you say to somebody who's trying to navigate that thing? Because you were able to get there, but not everybody's able to do that. So what would you say to them?
Better socialize with others outside of those that you were socializing with prison. See, one thing that I learned about being in prison, that when we see another person that did prison time, we consider them our peers. So we start reminiscing, we start talking about things that we did inside prison, and our conversations is all about prison. So we don't socialize with those who never been in prison, so we just keep it within ourselves, because the trauma that happened, the trauma that with prison related is, we see a lot of things that happen in prison negatively, and we look at it as being normal because of where we came from within the inner city. So we just look at it as being all one and the same, but that's not normal. Normal is just living a positive and productive life. So what I would say to those that coming home that experiencing PICS, understand that syndrome, understand what post-incarceration is, and come to those who consider experts in that field and sit down and don't be afraid to ask for help. PICS is similar to PTSD, but it just affects those that's coming home from prison.
Thank you very much, Mike. Yes, go ahead, clap it up. You talked about the psychological effects, PICS, similar to PTSD. We have an expert with us here today. Carla, could you help us think through sort of, how do we address this issue? When someone who was a returning citizen coming back into community, coming before you, what are some of the things that you're telling them and helping them process their mental state at that particular moment, particularly as you think about what Mike said, what his mental state was during incarceration and even after incarceration, and how do you navigate that, and what would an expert say to them?
That was a lot of questions. I think that just thinking about a lot of this, right? There are a lot of people who go into prison with an undiagnosed mental illness that we don't know about. They don't know what the symptoms are. And a lot of times when people are incarcerated, their symptoms are not recognized, and sometimes they don't know what the symptoms are, and then they are not able to see a mental health provider. So I've heard people, so I've worked in the prisons, and I've heard people who are incarcerated say that they are not taken, their mental illness is not taken seriously unless they are smearing feces on the wall or they're saying that they're suicidal. That is the only time that they are getting mental health services. And a lot of people are having anxiety, as Mike mentioned. You know, there's anxiety, there's depression. People are isolating themselves in their cells. A lot of people may not feel safe in jail, so they don't come out of their cells at all. There's also staffing shortages at times, and so people don't get to go outside. There's limited sunlight. There's all of these things that impact people's mental illness. And a lot of people who return, one of the things that I've noticed a lot is, so I grew up in Dorchester, and so I know a lot of people who have cycled through the system, my family members, friends, and a lot of times they share that, you know, it's really hard to find a therapist who actually understands them. Somebody who's a person of color, somebody who's from the community who understands the barriers before they went in, and then the barriers when they come out. As Mike mentioned, you know, there's a lot of people aren't able to see their family and friends, and so that also causes, contributes to their mental illness. So I think, you know, and then there's also the barrier of accessing mental health services as well, and so that is a big challenge, whether it's, you know, insurance. You know, as Senator Miranda mentioned earlier, there's people coming home and they don't have IDs, they don't have access to services. I'm a social worker and I struggle to access mental health services at times because it's just challenging. There's also a shortage of behavioral health providers. There's just so many things that contribute to the lack of services that people are able to access. I don't know if I answered all your questions.
You answered most of them. No, you did. I think it's important because when we're thinking about these resources, it seems that we have more people, but not enough. And, you know, Jay, maybe I'll come to you about this one. What is the role of community organizations? You lead a fund. Your fund is very intentional. But what is the role of community organizations? You were at Haley House previously. How do we think about spaces beyond the traditional spaces as means to provide those supports, provide those resources, or create more access points for folks to feel as if there's enough hands there to reach out to actually help them reintegrate in society?
Yeah, so, you know, when I was at Haley House, you know, the mission was food with purpose and the power of community. And I really want to underline that community word. And that was the true heartbeat of, you know, what that organization and what I got to be a part of, because that's who I saw myself a part of, which was community. You know, I came to Boston in 2018, and, you know, big surprise, Boston's a very provincial city, so I was just trying to find my way, my path. And I found my home, like, in the work of, like, social justice and reentry, because I got to work with the reentry community through the LIFT program. And what I saw come through was all of these amazing resources and the folks that wanted access to it. So, like, real quick, just kind of poll, if you represent a community resource, you know, for the reentry community, if you can just, like, raise your hand and just look to see who's in the room. And the part that we're all here to do, not just make our services available to those that need our services, we're here to learn about what Ashley does, what Dan does, what Bobby does, what Milton does, about when folks come to us and we're not the right place and the right home for them, we know where to go. And it's not just say go to the website, it's like call Dan, you know, call Ashley, you know, call Mike, and these are the people that can help you in your next step in your journey. Like, we're responsible for not knowing what we do for ourselves here in Boston. We're responsible for knowing what the ecosystem does. And when we can understand how the ecosystem works, we can then start plugging people in the right way and whatever is important to them. And then they grow up, and then they're able to understand how the ecosystem works. So then as a whole web, we're like lifting each other up. So that's that point.
Well, thank you, Jay. Off of Jay's point, don't leave here today without meeting somebody new. The ecosystem is broken because we don't talk to each other. We see each other, but we don't talk to each other. So please make sure you're intentional. Don't leave here today without meeting someone new and finding out about the work that they do. Mike, I want to come back to you because you came and created one of those resources. And could you tell us just about some of the successes that you've had and even some of the challenges that you've had as an organizational leader and things that you think we could be thinking critically about to better create a more engaged ecosystem for folks returning in our communities?
It's all about the power of combination. So you got so many reentry organizations in the city of Boston, but the one thing that we don't do is combine the powers that we have. Like each organization has their own unique abilities to bring about a change. So with the Life After Prison, how we bring about a change is creating different types of programming to help those coming home from prison as well as those inside prison. We also help those that's inside prison gain the better education, so once they do come home, we could take it to the next step and help them escalate on an independent aspect, help them become entrepreneurs, help them become better fathers, help them become better employees, help them become better people in general. Because in order to become an entrepreneur or do anything successful, you have to assess your own mental health. So we all know if something is wrong with us, but it's up to us to make that decision and to create that ecosystem within us, and then we can go out and ask for help. A lot of people that come home from prison is scared to ask for help because they're scared of rejection. They're scared of failure. They're scared of not being successful, but success starts within. So one of the things that I did when I came home, luckily, I was able to find employment within my first 2 weeks coming home. So that form of employment helped me establish my first business and helped me understand entrepreneurship. I learned entrepreneurship while I was incarcerated, I created a small network of mentors who was able to help and teach me about growth and development and developing my own personal plan. So I think it starts with developing a personal plan before you could do anything.
Well, thank you so much. I think that's important. You talked about work too. One of the things that I think is important, and I know that we do here at our church, one of the things we did was just reframing how we look at people. So, you know, most churches, they have prison ministries. We scratched that. We called it the restoration ministry because we believe that people are being restored, and the only thing that separates us from them is the walls that have been created. The other piece that we do, we try to meet people when they walk out the doors. We have resources and work closely with South Bay, MCI Framingham. I go out there and preach every year. I go out there and preach to the sisters out there. But a big part of that is having opportunity when you walk back into the community. In my other capacity, I serve as president and CEO of the American City Coalition, and we launched a program almost 3 years ago called Roxbury Works, where we focused on 3 sectors: life science, biotech, healthcare, and blue-green tech. But what we began to realize is that nobody wanted to have the conversation about returning citizens. We're having these workforce conversations. We're having these difficult, hard conversations around why we don't have enough workers. The industry is considering moving to another location. We can't find enough quality people to come work. And I'm like, well, we got a whole bunch of people right here. I think one of the questions I think we're trying to work through is what are some of those barriers? Because some of it's perception, but what are some of those barriers that folks are running into to get that job in 2 weeks? And how can we, all these stakeholders in here, better help people navigate that? And that's for you, Mike, but also maybe Jay and Carla as well. You know, what are these barriers that we could be working on reducing or removing? You know, I mean, that's the goal, to remove them, to make sure folks can re-enter healthily back into society.
So one is like the social media gaps. You know, a lot of people come home that did a lengthy prison sentence and don't even know how to use the phone. They don't know how to navigate through the internet. You know, their resumes is light. So just coming home from prison and knowing that you never had a job and you going for a job, that's mental health right there. Because in your mind, you automatically think you ain't gonna get the job. And then once you get the job, you feel that you're underperforming because you're going up against those who already has been at that place of employment for years, and you trying to keep up with them. So that's one of the barriers. Another barrier is the financial barrier, just understanding finance. So you having a job, but you don't know what to do with money because you still got the mindset of a drug dealer where you get the money and you spending it. So you ain't responsible enough to pay your bills. You ain't responsible enough to do anything with your money but spend it. So those are the two barriers that I faced coming home, and I see others face that come to the life after prison that seeks our help and our assistance.
Yeah, so what I see when I talk to folks, it's the quarry. So, you know, for those that come home and folks that are applying for jobs and they run a quarry, you know, they're looking to see if there's some sort of like criminal record. And a lot of the progressive folks say, oh, like we're quarry friendly, so you can apply here. Folks apply, they get the job, and then 2 weeks later, they're let go. And I've heard this countless times from saying, you know, I can get a job, but then I'm fired, you know, 2 weeks later, and then the cycle continues. And, you know, where I see the gaps, looking at the legislature, looking at the laws, looking at how the society's built, is that unless it comes from the top, and then that is like literally written in policy for the HR manager to then say, it's okay for me to move forward with this applicant, nothing is gonna change. So right now, little plug that we are trying to rewrite the bill that after 7 years, your quarry is automatically sealed, period. New sentence. Right now, it takes up to 7 years where you have to do it yourself. So whatever we can do for the employers out there that says that they're actually quarry friendly, to make sure that it's actually written in their HR policy so that when folks get that job, they're not let go 2 weeks later. And they have to come back. So that's the part that I see, you know, in this work. So however it is that we can kind of galvanize as a community to know who's out there, who's quarry friendly, and share that amongst each other, then we know that we're actually setting people up for success.
So about 60% of people in jails report mental illness, and about almost 50% of people in federal and state prisons report that they have a mental illness, right? So if that's happening there and it's going untreated, how do we expect people to come home and live a productive life, right? If they are struggling with your mental health, it can be very daunting, it can be exhausting, especially not having access to resources, so then you become very hopeless, and it's really hard to get access to services. So a lot of what I've seen with my clients that I've had is that, you know, similar to what you mentioned, you know, I would help them fill out forms, they would go to mass hire, they would help them with their resume, I'd connect them to all of the resources, doing all of the right things, and then they get hired, and then they're fired a week or two later. I can't tell you how many calls I've gotten after someone was working so hard to get to the point where they can get employment, and then to be let go a week or two later, over and over again. So that constant rejection is not, you know, it's not healthy for someone. It doesn't really, you know, it contributes more to the mental illness that they currently have. So I think that, like you mentioned, you know, there's so many employers who say they're quarry friendly. On the surface, they are working with programs to hire people, but I have seen organizations who, I was working with, in partnership with organizations to help my clients find jobs. And then when I speak to someone at the program that they're supposed to be partnering with, they say they have had 0% of job placement at some of these organizations that claim to be quarry friendly and claim to support people who are incarcerated. So I think we really have to stop looking at just the surface and what people are saying and actually digging a little deeper and holding these organizations accountable.
So it seems that there's some policy shifts that need to happen, right? And I'm glad we have the AG's office here and a few other folks who are state senators and state representatives that are in the room. But it also seems that there needs to be more services provided to accommodate for folks who do get the job. How do we begin to create those accommodations? What are some of those accommodations, Mike? Because you brought up the social media thing, and you're right. There's some people, social media wasn't even developed when they went in, and when they come out, they have to figure out these gaps. What are some of the other accommodations, particularly around the mental health thing, that you think employers that may be in the room are trying to struggle through? Like, you know what, I'm here because I want to learn. What accommodations could they be providing returning citizens that are maybe dealing with mental health illnesses or struggling with other issues that affect their mental health?
I think really being aware of what the symptoms are that impact people, right? Like, do you have an employee that's fiddling with their fingers, during meetings, or do they appear to be anxious? Are they struggling? And then accommodating them, I guess really educating them on what services are available, right? There's accommodations through HR that people can get for their mental illness, but also supporting them, whether they have doctor's appointments that they have to go to. A lot of times when people do release from jail, they don't want to miss work. They don't want to risk losing their jobs. I think really making it clear that, whatever they need to continue to work and whatever they need to take care of their mental illness is a good start. But there's also other systemic barriers. There's transportation issues. There's all of these other things that, a lot of the social determinants of health that we talk about, those impact people all the time. And so if somebody doesn't have transportation to go to a doctor's appointment or transportation to get to work, that's also extremely stressful. So I think as a city and as a state and, government officials and everyone who's here, there just needs to be a lot more resources. We say that we have enough resources, but those resources are not communicating with each other. We should be, when I worked at one of the jails close by, I worked closely with Fathers Uplift so that I can connect people as they were releasing straight to Fathers Uplift. They would pick them up, they would drive them, to go see their probation officer, they would take them to get their IDs, connect them to Access to Recovery, and to remove them from this area, because some people did struggle with substance use. Not everyone who releases from jail is struggling with addiction, but it is a maladaptive way that people do cope with the stressors, especially if we don't have those coping skills. So partnering, when I think of partnering, that's what I think of. I think of actually working with someone and doing a warm handoff to the organization, and not just saying, hey, here's the website, here's some paper, look it up yourself, or look up the resources. Actually giving them the resources, connecting them to the person, and having them access those services.
I think that's important, that we do need these resources to speak to each other. We spend a lot of money in the state. I see Representative Chris Royal came in there. We spend a lot of money in the state on this issue around public safety, around recidivism per se, and yet the numbers continue to stay pretty steady, as we have seen in the research. I wonder, are there successful models that can be replicated? Are there some models that you've seen, and anybody can answer this, that, that works? We're just not leaning in on that enough. Is there some models that we can discuss, that we can think about, or even some strategies that we think? I know we need the policy. You're right. The HR directives is a big one. So we probably need to pull our state representative over after later and talk about that. But are there other models, and maybe I should even expand it, community models that seem to work?
Yeah. So one of the community models that I seem to work is like the Office of Returning Citizens, because you got people that come home from state, federal, and county prisons, and they go to the Office of Returning Citizens and seek the help that they need, and they do give off warm handoffs, like to the Life After Prison and other organizations through referrals. So that is one organization or one agency that I can see that helps those coming home from prison entirely.
Yeah, I really believe that when folks are coming home, there's housing, there's employment, there's mental health. In that order are the valuable pieces of the puzzle that need to be put into place. And for folks coming home that have a family member or a loved one that they can go into, like that's a blessing. For someone that can get plugged into a job because of connection, like that's a blessing. You know, for folks that actually have someone that they can talk to who's a peer that understands what's going on, like that's a blessing. And when you start like building all of those sort of like pieces together, the question is like, well, what's next? Like, what are you looking to elevate? Like, is it business? So if it's business, you have programs like Mike's, you have programs that the Office of Returning Citizens runs, you have the programs that Dorchester Bay has to offer, and then those support systems around that exist. So then, you know, you have opportunities for funding with the Fountain Fund. You have, you know, opportunities of coaching and mentorship through like the BU program. So really, when folks could start naming whatever it is that's in front of them that they need the most, there's something or someone that is willing and able to help you. And then once that piece is set, that person has that knowledge, so they can reach out back behind them and pull that person up. But then they start naming what's next for me. If they're in a job but they want to elevate their career, like that's a whole conversation. You know, if they're looking for culinary arts, you know, there's like NECAT here, there's community servings here, literally in this building. So you can sort of talk to them about what are those skills like. You can go to Work 2, which is right there on Washington Street, and get some trade training, if that's what you're looking for. Like once people just starting to figure out what's next for them, and they have a trusted source that they can kind of talk to about, I'm thinking about X, Y, and Z, whatever that X, Y, and Z is, folks in this room, folks in this community just need to pay attention, against my first point, about what services and what opportunities are out there so that they can start this pathway of moving forward. And then, you know, similar to Bobby's point, it doesn't end there. Like Bobby's doing amazing work and he's also giving back and he's also looking for what's next for him as well. So that's where we show up. You know, like quick story, you know, like I come to the stage from my grandfather, who was a stowaway to New York, who my father didn't even graduate from 8th grade, to a brother who was formerly incarcerated. And I had the opportunity to go to school, to learn about business, to learn about community work. And this is my work to reach back as much as I can. Everyone here is moving on to their next step, and there's an army of folks that are behind you, and it's our job to also reach back and lift them up as well.
Also, making sure that we're investing in the organizations who are doing the work. We have Transformational Prison Project that started in jail because they weren't getting the services that they needed. So they started that together along with another group, Tudu Juntu, and so they all have worked together to support each other. And I don't know if Yard Time's still here, but Yard Time came home and he started his own organization as well. And I've seen them at mental health events at the Museum of Science, you know, and so, and they're a community of people who were recently incarcerated. They fully support each other, and that sense of community is something that also helps people get through their struggles when you do share, but also being mindful that you're not trauma bonding in a way that you're not able to get out of it and move forward, but figuring out what are the solutions, what are the resources that are available so that you can continue to thrive.
That's very helpful. I'm thinking about the things that you all have said, and there are some folks in here who are part of organizations who are trying to maybe get into the work. You know, maybe they don't have the infrastructure ready yet. Maybe they don't know how. They have a heart to serve and to support returning citizens, but they haven't quite figured out how to do that effectively. What do you say to those folks? What do you say to those organizations who, you know what, we want to hire more people, we want to do more things, we want to be a support, maybe we want to help people rewrite resumes or help navigate. What are some of the issues that they, or how would you help them to get into this work? And what advice would you give them? Maybe Mike, we'll start with you.
So I would help them. I'm gonna speak on behalf of the Life After Prison. We will help them with, first, one-on-one consultations, volunteering, understanding the structures of what a nonprofit is, and actually doing the work. You have some organizations that do the work but don't do the work because they're trying to do all the work. So you must, in order to be a master, you must know and understand all things in existence, but first you must understand what your purpose is with your organization.
I'll just add that I think one of the things that Sheriff Tompkins held when I worked there was a job fair at South Bay. So I think that doing more of that, when you know that you have a group of people who are releasing, or even if it's one individual, having people come in to share the opportunities that are available, helping them get signed up, having Mass Hire and other organizations who help with resumes come in and help people. I think starting there so that they know that, I have this, doing, I guess, a very thorough discharge planning. Discharge planning doesn't just mean making sure that someone has a place to live. It also means, do they have the medications that they need for their mental illness? Do they have access to services? Do they have the skills that they need to get a job? But also, where are those resources, right? It's hard to find a lot of these things, and like Mike had mentioned, some people don't know how to use the internet or don't know how to apply online. A lot of applications are online now. So I think making it easier, bringing the resources to people so that they can have increase those opportunities.
Thank you. Jay, I'll come to you. You have a fund, and the Foundation Fund is doing this work. What does public-private partnerships look like to do this work? We talk to CEOs all the time, talk to all these folks, because I do agree with you. It has to start at the top. If it doesn't start at the top, it fizzles at the bottom. But what are we saying to those corporations, those CEOs, those folks who are decision makers about what the work they need to do? Because so much we put on our returning citizens, but if we were to put this burden on our executives, what are you saying to them when you're asking them to get into this work, and what does private partnerships look like as we do that work?
Well, the philosophy behind the conversation is around, do you see the potential in your fellow man? Do you see an opportunity that somebody can be uplifted with choice and passion and purpose, that they can actually contribute positively to their community? If the answer is yes, then we can have a conversation. For folks who are serving, at higher levels for economic development for their community, like there's a business there. Like they're looking for more customers, they're looking for like more opportunity, they're looking for more growth. Where is that coming from? Like, are they lifting up those to be able to sort of train to get into whatever next level is up for them? When I'm talking to, constituents or folks that are in the like city or sort of state level, I was like, we are talking about like the citizens that we all are part of. Like, are we going to be giving them opportunity to be, contributing to what we all want, or are we, putting money sort of elsewhere? So I just try to say as sort of like positive, sort of like, what are we all in this together for? And then specifically with the Fountain Fund, because we are a micro lender, and our fund supports those that are applying for it, but also supports those that are coming behind it. It works in perpetuity, right? So like, we're not making any money with our fund, but when folks pay back that loan, they're giving the opportunity for the person that's behind them. And then that just goes, forever, if you could sort of like think about it. I mean, like, micro lending is not like a new concept, but it's a new concept here. Like, it's a Grameen Bank in India that was, sort of premiered, that uplifted so many folks from like abject poverty because of the choice of like investing in its people and giving them that financial knowledge about how do you use this tool for your own purpose and your own possibility. And then that's where the Fountain Fund sort of comes in. It's not just about, here's a check and good luck. It's like, okay, how do we plug you into the entrepreneurship community? How do we plug you into like into the business opportunity? How do we plug you into the job opportunity? And then what's next after that? Then they can come back and then they retell that story. And then that's where the Fountain Fund's work within the reentry community wants to be a part of.
Come on, give him a big hand for that. That's an important piece of that. I want to just acknowledge, I'm about to ask the last question before we come to you all for Q&A, but I just want to acknowledge our state representative, China Tyler, who's come in today. Come on, please, put your hands together, China. And I see Reverend Art Gordon, who is a pastor right here at St. John's Missionary Baptist Church. And Reverend Jeffrey Brown, I see you right here, who's an associate pastor here at 12th Baptist. Reverend Wayne Daly, God bless you. He's here, and I got another reverend in the house today in a couple of capacities. Trina's trying to tell me something. Where's Jose? What Chief Jose Masso? He left. Oh, Chief Jose Masso was in the building as well. I didn't see him. We'll shout out him as well, and we'll thank him for his work. The last question, and answer it in the spirit in which you feel. What does it look like for a returning citizen to come through and be successful? Well, what does that look like? What does success look like for each of you for returning citizens?
I'm gonna say happiness, peace, freedom, and just doing things that you love to do without restrictions.
I would say it's about your next choice, to have the freedom to make that next choice based on what you think is possible for yourself, for your loved ones, and for your family.
I would say it's eliminating all of the barriers so that people can live and thrive in the way that they want to, right? I don't think that people come home and they say, you know, I want to experience homelessness, or I want to continue to struggle with mental illness or substance use or any of those things. But because there are all these systemic barriers in place, it makes it really hard for people to continue to move forward. So for me, I think it's just really, like I said, holding these organizations accountable and really working together with people and asking, you know, having panels like this and asking people who are recently released to talk about what are the services they need and, you know, what do they need to continue to thrive? Because as Bobby mentioned earlier, they're the ones with the lived experience. They're the ones who know all of the barriers and all of the things that they face. And so, you know, making sure that we're listening to them and then creating that space to provide those services for them.
And I'll just put two words out there: healing and wholeness. Healing, wholeness. That's not just for folks that are returning. Yeah, it's not just for folks who are returning, for them to find that, but for our communities, for our families, to find healing and wholeness. When they come back, we are better. We are more whole together. And when they're away from us, we're broken. We want our community, we want our families, we want our brothers and sisters to find healing and to find wholeness. And to me, that's true liberation. Let's go to a time of Q&A. Come on, give this panel a big round of applause. Big time, you gonna ask the first question? We want to open up the floor. We'll run to you. I'll run to you. We got a question here and a question back there. Trina, I'll take the one.
Stand up, yeah. Thank you all for the presentation. I just want to thank everyone today. Trina, Carla, Jose, Mike, just thank you all. Rev, appreciate you all for this presentation. This was very much needed. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lavelle Folks. I'm the Associate Director of the Violence Intervention and Prevention Initiative with the Boston Public Health Commission. I work with Bobby. We work together on the Department of Justice grant, the Community Violence Intervention and Prevention Initiative with Bobby and We Are Better Together, which is a survivor-led organization by Ruthie Rawlins, which supports caregivers and individuals. I'm just laying all that out there to say there's a lot of work in this space that has happened in the last 17 years that I've been home. I did 8 years of incarceration, 9 if you count the year I did in DYS, and came home in 2007. And I've been home since that day. I've been doing work in the community, and I want to say that this didn't exist 17 years ago at all. And so the transition that the society has made is a great thing. But I just have a question for anyone who would like to answer this. What are your thoughts about the role public health, as I said, I'm from the Health Commission, the role public health has to play in returning citizens and in incarceration in general? And I'm asking that question because of the fact that for every year that someone's incarcerated, they lose 2 years of life expectancy. And so that's a drastic drastic health impediment, life impediment. And so, again, what role do we have to play as someone who's at the Health Commission? I know the role we have to play, but I would like to know what you all think, the role that public health has to play when it comes to returning from incarceration and incarceration in general.
I think as a whole, looking at the systems, our mental health systems are broken, right? A lot of our systems are broken. And so I think about like a lot of the jails and prisons are short-staffed. I remember, working in a prison and having meeting with clients and meeting with them for 45 minutes because that's what I do as a normal clinician. But in there, they were only being seen for 15 minutes. And I remember a woman crying and saying, the other girl who just left your office said that you're really nice and you actually give us time to talk. It's so disheartening to hear someone sit and tell you about their trauma. And some of the people, I can tell that was their first time ever talking about the things that they experienced. I mean, people sobbing in that room. And then for me to say, in 15 minutes, to say, okay, go ahead and leave, I think public health has a big responsibility to help in any way, whether it's funding, whether it's supporting people. But I think that we really need to improve the services within the carceral systems and post when people release from prison, because those services are crucial to people continuing to move forward in their lives. And when we're not providing those services in there, those symptoms continue to exacerbate. And so by the time people get home, it's just really hard for a lot of people to bounce back. So I think just really investing in these systems and increasing salaries for behavioral health providers. That's a big thing. Like, we have a lot of turnover. Hiring enough staff, because if you don't hire enough staff, then you increase the burnout in your staff. So those are key pieces that are driving people away from the behavioral health systems. But then also, I'm going to put a plug for the state reps and senators in the room for the SUPER Act, which which removes the licensure at the master's level for social workers. It also gives licensed independent clinical social workers CEU credits, and it also gives intern stipends so that they can get an education. A lot of people aren't able to afford to go to school and work full time and do internships, and so that also deters people from this profession. So we need to fix those systems so that we can support the people in our community who need help.
I think we have a question in the back.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michel-Ange. Sorry. I want to thank you for the thoughtful conversation you had today. My question is about that Corey friendliness you spoke about. As we know, people have different meanings of it, and it looks very different in practice. For some employers, it means you have somebody and then you drop off a couple weeks later. So I want to get your opinion on what, from your perspective, right, what does Corey friendliness, what that should mean, but also what it actually looks like in practice.
So, Corey, so if you have any criminal record out there, any employer can pull it and see what's sort of on there. And up to the employer can determine, based on what crime was committed, what's going to be acceptable practice or history based on whatever type of employment is being, set out for the applicants. I believe, Jay Villar's opinion, not anyone else's, that each employer needs to evaluate based on their own criteria what they think should be appropriate for their own work staff. I believe, and I've seen it myself, is that when folks are hired and given the opportunity, that they're the ones that actually stay the longest, they're the most loyal, they have an opportunity to really grow and succeed, and giving folks that true opportunity, they really see it as like, I'm invested and I'm believed upon, and I'm not gonna blow it. So as far as what kind of history that person has, I think it's up to the employer, but I don't think it should be this blanket statement that is, as soon as something is sought out, then it's dismissed. That's what I've been seeing as far as people just pulling a Corey and there's anything on there and then it's automatically a dismissal. I believe that it needs to be evaluated based on the policies that we're sort of talking about what then should be counted or not counted based on the employer's responsibilities.
Hi, everybody. I know earlier, Rev, you said what does success look like? My whole team's in here. Anybody from NECAS stand up? This is what... Yo, NECAS, make some noise up there. So we're talking about a program that's successful. State Rep Chris Worrell, you stand, you're part of the program. Stand up as well. But just a question, or some commentary. I think a lot of these organizations should resource a lot of these organizations in terms of culture, competence. I think we can all do the work, but we got to always meet people where they're at. And that's it for me.
Well, Big Time, I'm glad you said that because I think it ties in with the brother's question. We got a bunch of questions. I'm gonna be real quick. But I do think being Corey friendly is about us also holding organizations as well as corporations accountable for them doing the same work they expect returning citizens to do when they come into their organizations. What I've come to realize is that being Corey friendly is in vogue to make sure that you can get dollars, but they don't really have to do the work once they sit and they found these interesting loopholes. But what I do hope is that everybody in this room, that we hold these organizations accountable to do exactly what they said. And if they're not doing that, we stop sending people their way. We stop investing in their organizations, stop investing in these corporations. We have to be serious about the work. And I think, Bob, you said it earlier, because the people who've experienced it know it the best. And so we need to make sure that as we do this work that it is informed, but we can't do this if we're not holding these organizations and nonprofits as well as the big corporations accountable to also do the work to better prepare their organizations to receive and to implement policies that will help folks be successful along the way. So I think that's an important piece as well. Reverend Wayne, and we had a question right here.
Oh, wait.
Oh, my bad, I'm sorry. My bad, bro.
I'll do it quick. Hi guys, I'm Chris. First of all, my question goes into like housing and stuff situation. I teach, and I tell my students culinary is one of the most forgiving fields it is. So we can find you a job. We can scrap nails and do what we can to do to get you a job, because culinary don't care about where you've been. It cares about where you're going. It cares about the plate you're about to present. So I think that's the easy part if you show up. But my problem is housing. I work inside Suffolk County House of Correction. A lot of the students, participants we teach, they say to me, yo, Chef, I can't get housing. So a lot of them beat drugs. They literally like, yo, we have a bid on it because they're inside. And they say, yo, I got back on Suboxone so I can get housing. And I hate that. Like, I got students who beat it, who's feeling great, but they get back on it just to get housing. They have to say they're on drugs to get housing. So what is the solution? Be honest with you, like just straightforward, like, because I don't like the fact that I know students who literally beat it and then it's a hard time when they get out and they're on that and they beat it, now they got to get out just to do housing. So I don't know of any answers, but I would love solutions for that, for people that I could just talk to. I'm front facing with them every day. So how would that, any advice for you guys to help me with that, to give to them, would be great.
Is there anybody in here from Justice for Housing? Is Leslie here? I don't see, is she here? I was past that to Leslie, but I don't see her. Yeah? Okay.
Now, I think to that question, it's a real issue. As you all may know, we're in a housing crisis. We've been in one since probably around 2012. And we're 180,000 units behind production as it is, just for reasonable housing or affordable housing that we're trying to create in the Commonwealth. I think the other problem is we need to have, maybe write into some policies, my brothers and sisters, intentional housing for returning citizens. Making sure that we create units. We create units for a whole lot of things. we can create intentional units for returning citizens, particularly as folks who have already secured jobs, navigated the system, and the last thing they got to do is find some place to live. I think we have to be creative in the ways in which we are addressing the housing production, and that can't just be about folks who are moving into the Commonwealth or being displaced. It's about the folks who are coming back into our communities. And so I think that's a part of that conversation. I think there are organizations who are working on that, but I think also we're great to have two great state representatives right here who can help us really think through the policy of navigating that as well.
I think we have a question. Oh.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Reverend Bodrick. Reverend Daly, new pastor of Bethel AME Church in Providence. I also work for the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office. I will be remiss, and I thank you for just putting this together and for each person here, but I feel we'll be remiss because there are a lot of organizations. Because Boston is very rich in resources. It's all about collaboration, and the question will be more around the mentorship, if you could respond about the mentorship and the importance of having a mentor. And the other piece is the family dynamics, is the support for the families when their loved one is coming home from incarceration. So those two things, 'cause there are a lot of survivors of homicide in this room who are doing this work. And there are organizations in here who are working on both sides with the victim and the offender. So we want to also lift up that space in here of all the individuals who came home who are doing great work. Mothers for Quality and Justice. We got Donna Osgood, who is here, who's working for Boston Public Health Commission. So it's not just the organization, it's also the person who has that experience, who also uses that experience in their platform to help others who are coming home. There's also pastors like Reverend Brown, who also is in this space from the Boston 10-Point Coalition. So Boston is very rich, and there's always something good going on in Boston. Come on, there's always something good going on in Boston. And if you are connected to Boston and you're not in your own little silo, you will see how big, and I think Jay spoke about it early, it's about communication and it's about sharing resources with each other. But again, could you just answer those questions about the importance of mentorship for the individual coming home and the importance for that family dynamic of giving them that support, because now their loved one's home, they weren't worried too much about when they was incarcerated, but now they're home, and when they leave that house, the fear and impact of them not coming home. So what are the resources out there for that? Thank you.
So mentorship is an important piece of success. In order for you to be successful, the way I became successful was through mentorship, but my mentorship started while I was inside prison. And then when I came home, I had a different type of mentorship, which was my family structuring. I was able to come home mentally sane and able to ask my family for help. My family became my mentors, and my relationships became my mentors, so that's how I was able to become successful. I could speak for myself, and I could speak for others that I help, because I'm a mentor for so many others, not just on the business side, but just on the conversation side. A lot of people come to me and ask me how I do it, how I stayed out of prison. Ever since I was the age of 15, I never stayed out of prison no longer than 6 months. So being home from prison, going on 6 years, that's how I became successful, through the mentorship of my family, friends, and those that helped me.
Hi, everybody. My name is Laura. I'm a clinical social worker. I work with the Child and Family Wellness Center in Hyde Park, and I also am a social service vendor working on public defense cases. This has been such a wonderful presentation, and one of the things that's really stuck out to me is kind of, you know, how you all talked about like the ecosystem and just the amount of knowledge that is in this room, you know, the wisdom that is there. And side by side, along with that, I'm grappling with the idea that it feels like so much falls to the individual, to the returning citizen, to community organizations like all of us, to coordinate with each other and uplift this system. Can you guys hear me? It's hard to hear how well you're talking into a mic. And I moved to Massachusetts from out of state. I was in Connecticut. And I have to say, when I moved here as a clinical social worker with a specific interest in criminal justice, a background in human rights, I got to Massachusetts and I like started the job search to look for what system to plug into, and I could not find anything. I was totally confused. I was like, maybe I'm using the wrong search terms, I don't get it. And ultimately, I think what I figured out was that there's all of these amazing community-based initiatives and incredible people doing incredible things, but it feels like, you know, so much of this is funded through grants and fundraising and people who have to scramble together to make these services available. And that was not my experience when I was working. The place that I was in Connecticut. I worked for a program funded by the Department of Mental Health in Connecticut that was specifically in jail diversion and for returning citizens. And if we were to pool here the sort of idea of like a roadmap, like what are the things that people need? It's not rocket science. Like, people need housing, they need income, they need mental health, they need peer support. They need those basic things that people need. When I work with returning citizens, there's so many things that are not that different than any client who I would work with who's struggling with trauma and, you know, psychosocial stress. So I guess the question that I want to pose, and this has been posed in different ways today, but I want to kind of ask it from like a different angle. We have these incredible state representatives who understand this issue. We have all of this knowledge in this room. What are the barriers? Like, what is the reason that we don't have strong public policy and public funding in the state of Massachusetts for the work that is done in this room? And as a community, we've talked a lot about sharing resources and, you know, coordination of care. How do we collectivize our voice to move this forward? You know, from the top down, the work that's done here should have systematic funding behind it. Like, we've figured out how to incarcerate people systematically. Surely we can figure out how to systematically bring people home. If we were to make a list here and put a whiteboard up, we could show what that would look like. So, like, that's really my specific question, is like, how do we think about raising that voice forward? And I genuinely don't understand why that has not been able to happen yet in Massachusetts.
Thank you.
I'm actually going to start answering that question. And I think part of the answer is what we're doing here today. We partnered with the Attorney General's office to create a space, a roundtable first, now this setting, so that we can bring the community together, returning citizens, agencies that are providing services, community leaders, policymakers, to all bring these issues to the surface and to problem solve together. It is about creating this strong ecosystem. And so I think what you see here today is the first step in that solution.
And only add, you said something that was interesting to me about top down. I think the ways in which we really create a healthy ecosystem is bottom up. It's never going to start. If we're depending on state government or we're still depending on city government, we need them. Don't get me wrong. I appreciate all the representatives, but really that work starts bottom up. And so if we leave here today and we don't do the work of getting connected, galvanizing resources, ensuring that this isn't a one-time conversation, I can get a lot of amens. I'm so thankful. I love it. I love it. But making sure that this isn't just a one-time operation or a one-time gathering, that there is some continuity and a perpetuity for this, then it won't happen. And we'll be asking the same questions. But if we leave here today saying, you know what, we got all the tools that we need right in this sanctuary, right in this community, right in this room, and if we make the touch points necessary, we can create that safety net that is necessary to make sure that all people come back into community and find that healing and find that wholeness that you're working for every day. So I think it starts with organization to organization, and when we come together, it makes it easy for them to make their decisions because the people are making a demand. And when the people make a demand, we expect them to respond to the needs of the people. And that's the work that we have to do. So that's our charge today. Let's come together, let's join hands, let's galvanize today.
I know we have way more questions than we have time today, So we're not going to be able to take any other questions, but I hope that you guys stay for the expo. There are a lot of answers in that room downstairs, so make sure that you stay. Can we please give this moderator and this panel a round of applause? Thank you. Thank you for an amazing, honest conversation. Thank you so much. So, our keynote speaker is here. Thank you. I keep saying all morning, I've been saying just about how full, oh, sorry, wrong one. I can just march this one. Here you go. I'll just use this one. So all morning, I've been saying how full my heart is, and to see this entire sanctuary full, the balcony full, to see that in that room of resources, it's filled with resources, I'm so, so excited. So, I started off apologizing that, I know a lot of you wanted to hear Father Greg, and we are wishing him well. He is ill and not with us today. I think you all know that. But I could not have wished for a better keynote speaker this morning, who has been just such an incredible partner to Boston Medical Center and to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Help me welcome Attorney General Andrea Campbell, and I have your bio, which I'm going to read, yes. A.G. Campbell, on January 18th of 2023, was sworn in to be the 45th Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, pledging to build economic prosperity and stability for all residents, prioritizing the mental health and well-being of children, stopping cycles of incarceration and violence to ensure that people across the state have access to the AG's office, regardless of their zip codes or their language ability. She grew up in Roxbury with a life filled with instability. When Andrea was 8 months old, she lost her mother to a car accident while going to visit her father in prison. She and her brothers bounced around, living with relatives and sometimes in foster care until her father got out of prison when she was 8 years old. That's when she met him for the first time. Andrea and her family relied on public housing and food assistance while her grandmother struggled with alcoholism. Her two brothers sadly cycled in and out of the prison system. She lost her twin brother, Andre, when he passed away while in the custody of the Department of Corrections as a pre-trial detainee. Through all of this, Andrea persevered. Thanks to her loving relatives, community support, and a network of teachers who encouraged her, she turned pain into purpose. She graduated from Boston Latin School and then worked her way through college with the help of grants and student loans, graduating from Princeton University and UCLA Law School. After earning her law degree, she worked as a legal services attorney for the Ed Law Project, defending the rights of children and their families, particularly those with disabilities. Andrea practiced at Persaker, I said that wrong, LLP as an employment attorney, and ultimately left to serve the public as general counsel at the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, working across 101 cities and towns to address regional challenges like healthcare access, transportation, affordable housing, and climate change. Andrea served as legal counsel to Governor Patrick, working to improve our education and transportation system and moving forward the agenda of equity across the state. Help me welcome our Attorney General, Andrea Campbell.
Thank you, Trina. I'll let you start. I think so. I've been working out. Okay. No, I'm joking. First of all, I want to acknowledge Trina is hugging our Suffolk County District Attorney, Kevin Hayden. Thank you for being here. I think other electeds were acknowledged, and I don't do this work by myself. We all do it in partnership, so I'm just grateful to each and every one of you. Trina, thank you and your entire team for everything you did to help coordinate all of this. I know you acknowledge your team members. It was also great, of course, to see Dr. James here, but just if you could give them a round of applause, they put in a lot of work, and there is a significant amount of time, energy, and resources that go into planning something like this and to make it accessible to community, and I never take that for granted. Also grateful to be here at 12th Baptist Church. Thank you for the leadership. Thank you for opening up your space always to the community. You listen to my bio, folks know I'm very faith-driven, so I think being in this space as we talk about this work is also important. How do you get through such trauma? Yes, therapy, I believe in that, but also the grace of God, and I name that all the time. So just really delighted to be here as well. I also want to just quickly thank all of the community-based organizations and agencies, whether as an organization in your individual capacity, all of you who are doing the work, turning pain into purpose. It should be a bottom-up approach, not top-down, so thank you for being here as well. Thank you to everyone who's going to be downstairs tabling. Yes, we can clap for those people. Thank you. Because it's important work. It's significant. As someone who was formerly, I've never been incarcerated, but as someone who was formerly incarcerated coming into this space, to be able to connect with someone who understands their journey deeply is really important. I also want to thank my fellow panelists and everyone else who is participating today. And then last but certainly not least, I want to thank my team. I'm not going to thank every single one of them because we'd be here all day. But I want to thank Sherry Reaver, who's in the front, who is heading up our economic sort of portfolio of work, senior advisor on economic mobility and opportunity. Amanda Hainsworth, my senior legal advisor. They have been spearheading this work in partnership with BMC. Kayla, who is here, and Jared as well, who's downstairs. They will be tabling and offering up all the resources that are available to folks. I would say stop by this table, because if you're carrying student loan debt, as I talked to someone outside, we help people eradicate that. That's a $1 billion issue in Massachusetts, affecting millions of residents here in Massachusetts, and a lot who are people of color or single-family households run by women. So if you're carrying any student loan debt, go down to this table. If you want to know about Know Your Rights, quarry sealing, all of that, go down to this table. We revamped these resources to make them accessible to you, but they're not useful if people don't sort of take advantage of them and pass on and spread the word. So I just wanted to acknowledge team members. I clearly don't have to remind this group why we're here and why it's important to be in this space. Obviously, as we sit here, thousands of people each year are released, not only from the Department of Correction, but also the House of Correction, which of course is overseeing those facilities by our sheriffs. And we know the barriers they face. I'm not going to remind folks, as just was articulated, they need access to opportunity, they need access to housing, they need access to jobs, mental health supports, social and connection and community, equally important, healthcare, and so much more. And they just need their basic paperwork. And I've navigated that before, dealing with folks who were formerly incarcerated, helping them go get their Social Security card, their birth certificate, you name it. That in and of itself can be a challenge and a significant barrier to getting on your feet. So we all know the challenges in terms of what people need. And if we're truly going to be effective and impactful in this work, it really is an opportunity for us to come together and to be meaningful and intentional about coming together, and also not to waste each other's time. I stand here too. Yes, I'm the first Black woman Attorney General in Massachusetts. It is an honor and privilege to be your AG. It's because it's not about me, it is about us. It's an honor and privilege to be your AG. But I too share the frustration of folks in this room as someone who has dealt with relatives who are incarcerated and the pain of that. And frankly, as someone who stands there as your AG with folks in my family who are still incarcerated. And they would try to use that against me, and I often say, bring it on. Bring it on. Because I know it's reflective of so many stories, particularly of our young people, who often carry these stories with shame. And I tell them, don't. These are the stories that can make you more courageous, more resilient, and more purpose-driven to go after the things that you desire, not just for yourself, but most importantly, to serve others. But I too share the frustration that it shouldn't take so long for the Commonwealth to fund the work of these organizations doing meaningful work. it shouldn't take so long for us to figure out how to coordinate across all of our state agencies and organizations to make sure we're having the greatest impact. It shouldn't take so long to make it a priority of any office to get things done. And so I'm proud to stand here because what we have done in the AG's office is to make it crystal clear to many of you that we are going to make the work that we're doing to ensure that the office expands access to economic opportunity and economic mobility opportunities. And as we work to close the racial wealth gap, that we're not going to forget those who are formerly incarcerated and those who are currently incarcerated in this portfolio of work. And I think it's important that you sort of get the twist on language, or maybe not the twist on language, that it wasn't we're going to focus on reentry. No, we're going to focus on economics. And under this umbrella of economics and affordability, we're not going to forget the population that probably needs the most support and the most intentionality. And that's not just because of my personal narrative. Many folks who serve in my team also are equally passionate about this work. And so what we did was convene a group of stakeholders early on, and I'm grateful to those who participated this past April. Many of you were in the room from all across the Commonwealth, and I'll be intentional here. We were not just focused on Boston, but the entire state. We had folks come together for the office's first ever reentry roundtable. Think about that. The AG's office has been around since the 17th century, the first ever. And we did it to make it clear to those folks who were able to participate, and of course to all of you, that this will indeed be a priority for us, this work. It's not going to be at the bottom of the list, it's very much at the top of the list. When we develop our strategic plan, the same thing, it is in there as a priority. And while I'm grateful for those who participated in this initial roundtable with a whole bunch of stakeholders in the room, we said it's not good enough just to have one roundtable and to talk about some of the barriers and potential solutions. We have continued this conversation. This is a part of that. This is sort of the second iteration in many ways to invite more people to that roundtable. And I'm grateful for BMC's partnership with this, as well as that previous roundtable that we held in the office. This is also a continuation of the work and conversations that we've often had in silos to say we can't have it happen in silos anymore if we're going to be impactful. But I also want to name, we continued some of these conversations in the office. We've had smaller working groups and working sessions come together based on themes that appeared and showed up in those conversations. So we have a group of folks coming together to talk about entrepreneurship. It's not just about getting someone a job. If we have folks that have skill sets to become entrepreneurs and can start businesses, what are the barriers for that? And we know there are organizations working on this. So there's a working group of folks specifically focused on what we can do there. The second, of course, is everything related to housing. And if you're not following this fight that we are engaged with right now and everything having to do with the MBTA communities law, pay attention, folks. We had to sue Milton because Milton didn't want to come into compliance with that law. Why is that law critical? It is a tool, a mandatory tool. Most of our housing work was voluntary before. This is mandatory to say if you're a community that has a public good, namely transit, you should be required to build housing, and housing that is accessible to the very folks we're talking about. So these housing fights that we have also connect to this work. The other part that was also important was talking about jobs, of course, and then mental health supports as well. Before, I'm not going to talk at you long because I know there's a lot going on. I just want to name a few other points. As we do the work and we host some convenings and smaller group sessions and working groups on some specific topics, we know that we by ourselves cannot have the impact we all want to have, which is to ensure that those who are coming out, whether the first, second, third time, truly have access to a second chance or third chance or fourth chance. Most of us in this space come from communities where we know are disproportionately impacted by incarceration, or all of us maybe have been touched by a loved one who has been incarcerated. We don't have the luxury of giving up on these folks. They are a big part of our population, and most importantly, they're human beings. And secondly, if we're talking about public safety and ensuring all of our communities are safe, this is also a public safety and public health issue. So this will be not just a priority because it should be, but a priority in the deepest sense because of all those things I just mentioned, and I have to name that. We don't have the luxury of giving up, because if we do, we're going to lose another generation. I come to this work not just as AG, I'm a mom living in Mattapan with 2 beautiful young boys. We don't need to recite all the stats. I think they haven't really changed. If you're a black boy, 1 in 3 chance of ending up in this cradle to prison pipeline. If we're going to dismantle that pipeline and replace it with something else, and we have all the ideas on what the something else can be, we have to move with a sense of urgency, collaboration, bottom-up approach, and most importantly, have those who are actually impacted and justice involved to be at the table informing the work. And we can do that. And we can do that. I was really grateful that those who participated in our April initial roundtable, and that's just the beginning of many conversations to come, that I would say the majority of folks there had done time, whether house correction, DOC, federal time, you name it, and were courageous enough and resilient enough and powerful enough to share their stories in that conversation, but to also use those stories to shed light on what those barriers are and what the solutions could be. And I'm grateful to every single person in this space and who showed up with us, who had a story of incarceration, who had the willingness and the courage to share it. I never take that lightly, that people will be vulnerable in order to take that vulnerability and to turn that pain into purpose. Because in many ways, that's what we're all doing. So when I say it's an honor and privilege to be here with all of you, it truly is an honor and privilege. It is not about me, it is about us. And I'll end with just a mention around Father Gregory Boyle. I know everyone was absolutely heartbroken that the man ain't here. And I got the note, and I didn't know about any illness. I said, what? What do you mean? What's going on with him? Then you have to get more facts. So of course, and I think he has COVID. So of course, we want him to have a speedy recovery, and we wish him well. But if you don't know his work, it is significant. It is amazing. And as we do this work, we often talk about those who are, and I put this in quotes because the language matters, the perpetrators. I think we have to be very careful in how we name other human beings, even those who make mistakes that may be horrific. He is someone who sees the humanity in folks and has dedicated his life to helping those who are formerly gang involved or even currently gang involved get on an entirely different path with all types of resources and ways of doing things, focusing, of course, mental health, spirituality, but also entrepreneurship and so much more, and making them feel the very power that he feels in doing the work. So of course, we all wish him well. And I want to leave you with just a quote from Father Boyle, which is from his best-selling book, Tattoos on the Heart, The Power of Boundless Compassion. Compassion is not a relationship between the healer and the wounded. It is a covenant between equals. That's what this work must be about. It is a covenant between equals. There's no looking down, there's no looking up. All of us deserve a round of applause for being here and doing our best every single day, and I would say with the grace of God, but doing our best on that particular day to make a difference, to do better for ourselves, our families, and our community. So thank you all very much for the work that you all are doing. Know that the gratitude comes from me and my team. We look forward to collaborating with each and every one of you. We know this work is hard, so take care of yourselves. Trauma is real. Take care of yourselves and most importantly, each other. And as you go around this space today, there are strangers, people you haven't met. Extend love and gratitude, compassion, because you just never know what someone is going through. And today, your compassion can be the very thing that keeps them, frankly, alive, keeps them motivated, and excited to continue the work ahead. Thank you all so very much.
Please join me in giving the Attorney General another round of applause. Thank you. Thank you so much, A.G. Campbell, for your words and your encouragement. quite frankly, we struggled when we heard that Father Greg was ill and wasn't going to join us. And so we went back and forth about whether we should, reschedule. And we decided that, we had all of you registered. We had these amazing resources. And this event was bigger than that. And we wanted to make sure that we did not delay in bringing you the resources and the encouragement that you received today. So I'm so excited. My heart is so full. So thank you again. The work of the Attorney General's office is incredible. And so we appreciate you and the work and the commitment that you have made to this community and to all of us. So thank you very much for that. The best is yet to come, y'all, because downstairs is a room filled with resources for you. And so I hope that, you take the time. We have really the rest of the afternoon for you to talk to people who are here to give you the information and encouragement you need. We also have lunch that is probably just being set. It's a to-go lunch, so you can take it with you or you can eat it while you're here. But please take the time to visit the resource tables. If you have any questions that did not get answered after the panel, I think the people who you want answers from are going to be downstairs, so please make sure that, that you meet with them. I'd ask that we give the folks who have resource tables a little bit of time in the front to get down to their tables, and then maybe if we could go downstairs and join them. Make it a point to meet people that you don't know, have conversations with people who you haven't met yet, and thank you again. This is the first of what I hope will be many conversations and collaborations. So thank you so much for coming today, and we'll see you downstairs.
So I remember a number of years ago, earlier headquarters at 1960 East First Street, I was sitting at my desk and I could look out into the floor of the well, and there's a reception desk, and in walks this guy Magoo, and had just gotten out of prison after 10 years. This is the first time he'd ever stepped foot in Homewood. And I'll admit something, my heart sank as soon as I saw him, and I'm not proud of this. Let's just say he and I never kind of had a good relationship. I mean, I first met him when he was 15 years old and he was doing community service hours at the Lord's Mission Church. And I remember I asked him to do something, got in my Moscow and said, I don't have to do what you say. Cut to a few years later, I'm preaching at the funeral mass of his homeboy Hector, and I'm standing there between all the pews, and I'm preaching and I'm saying, if you want to honor Hector's memory, then you work for peace and you love your enemies. As soon as I said that, he stood up where he was sitting in the middle of the church. He came down the center aisle and he got my grill and mad dogged my ass and he walked out of the church. Wow. Cut to number 3-4 years later, I'm patrolling the projects at night on my bike, and I'm in one part of the projects and I see una bola of homies and they're kind of in a circle. Obviously somebody's fighting in the middle of the circle. So I throw my bike down, I go through the group, and I break up this fight. It's between Magoo and this guy named Smiley. And I find out later it's over some female. And, well, this has not pleased Magoo at all. He reached into the front of his pants and he pulled out a gun and he's kind of brandishing it. And the homies are saying, hey, don't disrespect G. And then he points the gun at me and he says, I'll shoot his ass too. Are you getting a sense of kind of what our relationship was like? So his homeboy Gus was at the reception desk and he intercoms me, hey G, Magoo's here. Do you want to see him? And he knew that it would be in question, and I said, well, sure, you know. And he comes in, and he does another thing that he's never done before. He gives me a big abrazo. Then he sits down, and he says, let's just talk man to man. I mean, look, I've never disrespected you. So I think I'm going to go for it. I said, what about the time you walked out in the middle of my funeral mass for Hector? Or how about the time you pulled a gun out on me? And he thinks for a second and he goes, yeah, but besides that. And then I saw him do another thing he had never done before that I ever saw. He really laughed. I mean, he laughed from the stomach. And he was just howling, and so was I. When the laughter subsided, he said, you know, I've spent my entire life building a reputation for myself, and now I regret I even have one. And then he did something I'd never seen before. He really, really cried. He was wailing, he was weeping, and I let him cry. Until finally, the tears subsided, and he said, now what do I do? I know how to drive, I don't know how to park. I know how to shake fools in prison. I know how to sell drugs on the streets. And I only know how to wash my clothes in the sink of a cell. Now what do I do? So naturally I hired him. But I learned that day, as we all learn over and over again, that Magoo is not a problem to be solved, but a person to be loved. And that's what this place is all about. And Junior and I and Larry had an amazing experience in an entire country that seemed to let love live through them, that they loved being loving. And so I invite you today to just, anybody you don't get along with or who's, you know, difficult, they're not a problem to be solved. They're just a person to be loved, and that will change everything. Thank you.